Hello and welcome to our latest fund manager interview. With me today is Walter Price, fund manager of the Allianz Technology Trust. Walter, thanks for your time today.
Great to be with you, Kyle.
So this recording is taking place at the start of a new year, a time in which there are lots of forecasts and predictions made for 2021. But I wanted to look a bit further afield and ask you to name some of the biggest tech trends and themes that you're playing in the portfolio for the next 5 years.
Well, I think this movement to the cloud and digital transformation that companies have been talking about, we've been talking about for the last 5 years, I think that that's been reprioritized as a result of the COVID crisis. And I think that companies, if they were doing it, they're trying to go faster, and if they weren't doing it, they're initiating new efforts to move to the cloud with their infrastructure. And so I think that's going to continue. We're probably about 20% of the way through that transformation. So we've got, the estimates that I've seen are that you're going to move 50% of your workloads by 2030, and you're at about 10% now. That involves many years of double-digit growth for cloud infrastructure and cloud applications. So we really like that trend. I think there's a transformation coming in the auto industry as we move to lower carbon cars, electric cars and hybrid cars, and perhaps hydrogen trucks. So there's a huge transformation coming in that industry. And then, I think as a result of COVID, you've moved more aggressively to e-commerce. That's become a higher percentage of commerce, and I think that trend's been accelerated. And this concept of commerce that involves delivery of whether it's food or whether it's groceries or whether it's the traditional Amazon type products, that's going to continue. Consumers like the convenience, and they've changed their habits, I think. And then finally, I think this work change. There's going to be more collaboration, more work from anywhere, and less travel. So there's a movement that was happening toward a more efficient workplace and workforce, and I think that's going to continue to be developed over the next several years by companies.
And for the electric vehicle trend, Tesla is obviously the standout name to play that trend, but I was wondering if you could give a couple of other examples of stocks that you hold for that particular theme.
Well, I think one of the things that the auto industry has underestimated is the difficulty of making that transition. There's a lot more semiconductor intensity in these new cars. And as a result of that, I think they've underestimated how difficult it is to get the semiconductors and the batteries that they need for their production. It's relatively easy to design a car, but it's hard to produce a new generation car. And I think as a result of this ramp up that automobile companies are trying with these new models, they're finding that there's a shortage of semiconductors, and they can't produce the cars that they want. And even Tesla's having to scramble. They want to grow their production by almost 100% in calendar 21, and at least another 50% in calendar 22. And they have 3 new plants coming on, and I think they're having trouble sourcing enough batteries and enough components, and they've been thinking about this for a long time. So, I think there's a global shortage developing and semiconductors going into some of these new model cars. And as a result of that, we've increased our weighting in the semiconductor industry, and particularly some of the companies that focus on supplying that industry.
And could you give a few examples of some of those businesses?
Well, if you look at our portfolio, some of the largest holdings would be a Samsung or a Taiwan Semiconductor or a STM. Those companies all sell into that industry. but now we have a very broad list of semiconductor companies that we own, 10 to 15 companies, and it represents 25 to 30% of our portfolio.
It's been a very eventful year, to say the least. I was wondering if you could compare how the portfolio looks today to how it looked a year ago.
Well, I think a year ago we were very focused on digital transformation, and we were focused on Apple and the 5G cycle. So we had started to increase our semiconductor weightings, and we had a large weighting in Apple and many of the FANG stocks. As we progressed through the COVID crisis, we increased our security holdings. The security breach potential is much greater when everybody's working from home and they're using a lot of their personal devices. And so companies were scrambling to improve their security and change how their networks were protected. And so that resulted in a large growth for that industry, which we think is going to continue for a while. So security was boosted. The digital transformation companies, we kept that large weighting. We started to add to semiconductors as the pandemic progressed and people started looking at the other side, because semis were obviously hit as people cut back on buying cars and buying other electronic items, but not as much as I think people expected, and therefore the rebound came quicker in semis. And then we started adding some still depressed manufacturing related companies. China cut back their purchase of manufacturing early in the COVID crisis, but as the crisis ebbed in China, they started boosting manufacturing spending, and many of the component companies, the laser companies and the vision companies that we own also started to rebound.
COVID-19 has been a clear tailwind for the entire technology sector. Has it been a rising tide that has lifted all boats?
Well, I think there are clearly some subsegments of technology that have been negatively impacted. Travel, advertising, the hospitality, those are clear industries that are suffering badly. Small business, particularly restaurants, also suffering badly. So, there are companies, a number of companies in our portfolio that sell to those industries, and those have been negatively impacted. But I think, initially those stocks were hit and the earnings were hit pretty hard in the second quarter of last year. But as I look at this year, I think also those companies will be the ones that are recovering strongly. The comparisons are easy. The small business and restaurants have figured out how to survive during this period of time, or at least a number of them have. Many of them have gone out of business, but the ones that have survived are figuring out how to do takeout and delivery. So I think that we're going to see a nice rebound in those cyclical sectors that were really impacted by COVID.
Walter, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Kyle.